Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our webinar dedicated to Salesforce for commercial real estate domain. My name is Olha Prodan and I'm an account executive for CRM and Salesforce practice at Ascendix Technologies. Today, we are going to share our experience and elaborate on why we decided to partner with Salesforce. Also, we'll be showcasing interesting use cases and tools. The webinar will be recorded. The recording will be sent via email to you. During the session, please don't hesitate to ask questions. In the right upper corner, you can see a special tab where you can submit yours. We've reserved a time to address your questions. Right now, I'd like to introduce our today's host, a CEO and co-founder of Ascendix Technologies, Wes Snow. Wes has a rich background in the CRM arena, and he's been on multiple advisory boards for CRM applications over the years, including Salesforce, Dynamics, and many other CRM platforms. Wes has more than 20 years of CRM consulting experience and is a frequent guest of podcasts, webinars, and conferences. Last 15 years, Wes has been focusing on the strategic development of various applications that simplify a broker's life, and as a result, got recognized in many industry-specific ratings. Wes, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Olha. And we have a very international audience today. And so good afternoon to many of you. And it's a very early good morning to me here in Dallas, Texas. So thanks again for the warm welcome there, Olha. And we've got a lot to cover and wanted to make sure we maximize your time and give you the most value from this hour or so that we're going to be spending together this afternoon. I'd like to formally introduce you to Ascendix Technologies, and then we're going to get into a little bit of use cases for the product that we've invested in. And we've got a special guest from Savills, Toby Wells, who's going to be sharing some of his story and history with us, and then we'll get into a few other details along with a Q&A. So with that said, Ascendix Technologies has been around for 25 years. We were, when we started, a CRM consultancy, customer relationship management. Did so in a more horizontal fashion, not with any specific focus, for about 10 years, and then decided deliberately to start focusing our energy in a particular focused area. And looking back in the rearview mirror and clients that we had helped, we chose the commercial real estate sector to build a very specific solution on top of. During that particular moment, we decided to move from being a pure professional services firm to dabbling in, really, product development. And at that particular juncture, recognized that while we could do some of this stateside, that we were going to be more effectual if we were to actually set up an office in another geography. And after having swirled around the globe a couple of times, we landed in Kharkiv, Ukraine, where we now have an office of about 150 people or so that are helping us deliver professional services and products specific to the commercial real estate sector. We've aligned ourselves strategically with Salesforce.com as the preeminent leader in the market. We chose to build a commercial real estate solution on top of that platform and have been rewarded handsomely for that. With that said, I want to give you a quick overview of some of the clients that we have, and then we're going to get into some use cases. So you learn a lot and when you're spending 15 years in a particular sector, and there's a lot of subject matter expertise and use cases that we've accommodated for on two fronts. One is professional services, as mentioned earlier. We've never abandoned that. We still have a very vibrant professional services practice, but we've built product to help focus on certain use cases, and some of those are outlined today. Tenant rep scenarios, landlord rep scenarios, investment sales, both on the buy and the sales side, along with focusing on issues that are dealt with property owners and operators, and even have some investments in capital markets plays where we're helping third-party financial intermediaries work through and manage the data that's generated on a regular basis. So I'm going to highlight a few of these via a product presentation here. We'll be brief, and then we're going to get into some interactive discussion with our guest speaker today. So with that said, let me share with you my screen. So from a tenant rep and a buyer rep perspective, a good bit of the way in which this tool is used is really around prospecting, profiling and prospecting people that you're doing business with. In the realm of tenant rep, we're really focusing more on tenants in the market, perhaps existing tenants. and being able to actually manage that information in a much more organized fashion. I'll be diverting my eyes over here to my monitor that's got the application on it, so I'm not ignoring you. So you've got a particular contact, for instance, this being a prospective tenant in the market, where we've captured meetings, phone calls, and things that you might do in terms of building rapport and relationships with people you want to do business with. Invariably, if we're doing our job, we're going to be putting some very pointed questions to those individuals we want to do business with. And in the case of a tenant in the market, we might ask questions revolving around their current lease situation. In this scenario, being able to document the fact that there are somewhere between 10,000, 15,000 square feet of lease space being occupied right now, with rent ranges between $25 and $27.50, to outlining also that this is a Class A office user, and having the ability to document when that particular lease is going to expire in the near future. And so in a quick glance, whether it be 5 days or 5 months or 5 years since the last time I've talked with Ryan, I'm able to quickly discern what we've done in terms of conversations in the past, phone calls, and so forth, but also being able to quickly reference what details I've put in my organization file to be at the ready when I'm talking with Ryan, and being able to react accordingly. Moreover, if we do this and do this religiously and consistently, we start to amass what I'll refer to as a real data asset for the firm, where in the past, instead of having to scramble to put together marketing lists and prospect lists, we now can use tools like this to go in and filter down on targeted lists that we can end up having cogent and very specific conversations with. So in this use case, I'm looking for all contacts in the database that I've created some sort of a lease profile for, of Class A office users. But really, to make it relevant when I'm outreaching to them, I want to make sure that I'm only talking to those that have a lease that's going to be expiring in the next 18 months. Anybody outside of that, probably not worth having a conversation about. And so with a quick click of the search button, although this database contains thousands of records, I've now got 52 people that I can have a very specific conversation with. And so as buyer rep and tenant rep brokers, we know we must always be doing prospecting. Nobody likes particularly to do prospecting, but we need to do it. And so might as well do it as efficiently as we possibly can. And so with this call down console, we have a list of all of the individuals that you want to talk to specifically about Class A office space with leases that are going to expire in the next 18 months. And we can go in and just prospect and process these one after the other in a very quick fashion. So that's a little word about tenant rep and buyer rep prospecting. There are other use cases, but for the sake of time, we'll move into flipping over to more of the listing side. And whether this is a lease or a sale listing arrangement, we're able to go in there and track not only the owners that own those properties, but the properties that they have are also contained in the system, allowing us to track a great deal of information. In this case, it's an office property. And you can see things like, where is this particular property located? What does it look like? If in fact it's a more vertically oriented building, which is the case here with a 9-story building, what leases and or availabilities are within that particular property. So these are all details that we're tracking as we perhaps pursue the owner for this listing. And if in fact we're fortunate enough to have won the listing, being able to track all the things that we're doing on behalf of the owner for the marketing of that property, including various marketing tasks that we might conduct, inquiries that we might have generated while effectively marketing the property, being able to track, whether they're active inquiries and been converted. This is a holding tank for those unqualified indications of interest. And as we do our job and qualify those relationships in, hopefully those would convert into prospective investors or prospective tenants in the market that we can continue to work on. And for those that have really established an engaging relationship, we can track what we refer to as deals. And in this case, it's a lease listing. So we're tracking landlord rep deals related to this particular deal here, or this listing rather. The benefit of which is now we've got a great organization system that allows, whether we're looking for marketing history, leads, or deal flow, to go in there and go one place for all that information. And moreover, because of the organization of this information, being able to go in there and actually generate reports externally for the owner, so that instead of spending the better part of an afternoon manually generating this outside of the system like Ascendix RE, we're able to generate this report right within the CRM tool. And so within a couple clicks of a button, being able to put something as formatted and professional as this in front of your client, the owner, to outline the inquiries that have been generated, the deals that are being pursued, and any activities that might have been conducted against that particular property. Being, of course, able to go in there and private label this and work with the layouts, all of that is possible. So a little bit of the listing side, but this is more focused on internal consumption inside the firewall, inside the brokerage, if you will. But we've made investments here recently for external constituents, those that you're doing business with, and trying to make the way in which we do business with those owners, those investors and tenants easier and more modern. And one of the steps that we've done or invested in is this notion of a listing portal. It stood to reason that if we're going to have all of this really rich listing information in our CRM system, why not share that information dynamically with those that are visiting our website, whether that be someone who's a tenant looking for office space or an investor looking for retail. This information is now being fed directly from the CRM system and made available on our public-facing website, such that with it, whether it be through searching facilities on the left-hand side, as you can see here, or using a map, we can quickly filter down into records that might be of interest to us. In this case, maybe selecting this lease listing for Preston Park Financial Center and seeing details such as what spaces are available and what's the square footage with each. And if in fact we're interested enough, we could click on the Contact Us button, which would then give that individual who's the anonymous visitor to your website an opportunity to look in there and put their information in the system. And that would immediately create a new inquiry, which we showed earlier within that CRM record inside of the Ascendix RE solution. And then lastly, eventually, as we go into this, we have this notion of tracking deal rooms or collaboration rooms. So here's an example of a deal room where we've actually invited an investor to this virtual existence where we can share things like confidentiality agreements and financials all within this virtual presence, as opposed to sharing a collection of emails with attachments. The confidentiality gets sent over, and whether it be through electronic signature or not, eventually it gets signed and gets put on some hard drive or network cloud file sharing system. All that information is now being stored here so that 1, 2, or 15 individuals that represent that investor group can gain access to all things pertinent to the potential candidacy of this particular property. And so is the case with changing fundamentally the way in which we do tenant rep work. Here's an example of an alternative, if you will, to a property tour book or a list of availabilities that are captured in a PDF attached to an outbound email. Rather, inviting the prospective tenant to this collaboration room where they're able to access in detail each of the properties that we've assembled, and even be able to dynamically qualify and disqualify certain listings that we presented to them, seeing not only the details at the property level, but also the available suites therein. In addition, being able to engage through conversational bubbles and share documents, and also see team members along the way. And so my goal today was just to do a broad brushstroke of review of the tools that we've evolved. There's continued investment here. This is a byproduct of 15 years of having invested in and listened to the market, and been disciplined about what we productize, but also knowing that we've leaned in on a platform such as Salesforce that's abundantly flexible, that allows us to solve for problems outside of our product with our professional services arm. And so one of the themes that I want to make sure that you get from today's presentation is that, yes, there's this intentional investment in Salesforce. There's this intentional development of commercial real estate specificity on top of it, so that you get that market acceleration and can have something usable at a cost that's far less than if you were to build something from the ground up, whether on a CRM platform or not. But also the companion professional services arm that we have is important, in that if there's anything that I've learned in 25 years of doing this, is that the product is great, but you need to have a partner that's a guide and can advise you and provide you those directional best practices, if you will, during this journey. So hopefully that's helpful for you. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the slide deck here. Just as a recap, we covered a number of these use cases. And for those of you who are in other areas that I hadn't covered, certainly willing and able to have a follow-up meeting with you later on. And so with that said, I'm very excited about inviting our customer, Savills, Toby Wells specifically, to join me on the stage here today and just converse a little bit about his journey with CRM in general, but also his selection process of a platform, that being Ascendix and Salesforce. And so without further ado, let me welcome Toby Wells to the stage. Hey, Toby, good afternoon to you. How are you?
Hi, Wes. How's it going? Hi, Ola. Hi, everyone. Well, I didn't have to wake up quite as early as you, being in Europe, but yeah. I guess in our journey we've been used to dragging you out of bed a bit early in various meetings in the past. So look, no better man for it.
Well, hey, I really do appreciate you joining. Toby and I have had a business relationship for now almost 3 years, maybe going on a little bit further than that, and started off really early on with Toby and his evaluation of various CRM tools. So maybe we start there and just kind of unpack for the audience here, kind of what the business situation and circumstances were, and then once having nailed that down, maybe talking a little bit about the vetting process for the various tools that you considered to solve those very problems.
Well, look, I joined Savills 5 years ago now, and I came from a very different industry. I came from marketing and advertising, and that industry had been down a very specific CRM journey. And joining Savills, we were very much at that crossroads of the market changing. Having coming out of quite a deep recession in Ireland for quite a number of years, the market had changed, different money coming into the business, into the country, and it moving very much from a kind of finger in the air kind of guess as to what we needed to, money coming in from the States, from Europe, and data being the real driver of how the business was going to succeed, and people wanting to know facts, not feelings. And the business sort of Savills Ireland's part of the wider Savills PLC group across the world, and they were on their own journey, I guess, to look at a CRM platform. But as I joined, I couldn't really kind of see how their CRM strategy was going to take shape. So we were looking locally for a solution that had the sort of traditional CRM function piece in there, but also had the properties, the stock, and could combine that journey together really. And we had one particular division that had already started to go out into the market and try and build their own Salesforce solution. But I guess what they'd done is right platform and right idea, but they were trying to build, my analogy is they're trying to build a handmade suit, which was great because it fitted really great for their function. But when we tried to kind of spread that sort of tool out to other departments, it didn't really fit, it didn't work. It was really fine-tuned to what they did in the office leasing space. So we were looking for, I guess, something that was more 80% ready out of the box, and we could customize and get to where we wanted. And Ascendix RE was really an accidental kind of discovery in the first part. We were looking for a really great search tool to add on to Salesforce, something that could address more than one object. And that's how we started our journey with you guys, what was it, 3 years ago now. So having those conversations about the platform, the product, and really quickly getting excited about what it could do out of the box, and thinking, well, if we can just tweak this to fit, we'll have the solution that we need. And I guess, 3 years later, we've reached that point.
Yeah, thank you. So tell me a little bit about some specific use cases. I don't know, to get too detailed, but obviously I've shared with the group here, some tenant rep and buyer rep scenarios, and a little bit on the leasing and sale listing side. Yeah, maybe unpack a little bit of that for us.
Well, I guess definitely certainly on the office leasing side, the office leasing team are obviously pitching with driving a kind of landlord engagements. But if we don't get that, we want to be able to very quickly move that into the sort of tenant rep space. So we can, if we don't get appointed by the landlord, we want to go to play the other side of the field as well and say, well, look, we can quickly draw a circle or a polygon around a particular building and say, right, okay, well, I can find you 50 people within a 3-kilometer radius of that building where, they've got leases expiring in the next 12 months. So we can go and target those guys for your building. So we can move around between the landlord engagement and the tenant rep side. So it's kind of win-win for us. So we've got both sides of that covered, because we can really quickly now just say, right, okay, I can find this information. And as you alluded to, we really had this kind of culture of Excel in the business when I started, which a lot of companies have. They're using Excel as a database, and it's literally people scrolling and finding, rather than being graphical and looking at a map and drawing a polygon and saying, right, okay, give me a kind of 1 kilometer radius around here. We built, on the back of this, we built a phenomenal comparables database for our valuations and landlord and tenant teams. So, we can target rent reviews. When we're pitching, it's a technology advantage as well. And I guess even just from the inquiries piece as well, when someone phones up and says, look, I'm looking for 10,000 square foot of space within, a 10-minute radius walk of Pier Station, I can just say, yep, there you go. Within, 2 minutes, they've got a brochure in their email with, all the guides, all the maps, everything handcrafted to them. So it gives you that kind of personalized touch as well. It's not, oh, look, I'll follow up with you and I'll find that information out. They're generally getting that information into their inbox whilst the agent's on the call, which, especially when you're a dual agent, that's the advantage.
Absolutely. Well, I'm on sales calls all the time, and what I pitch is this acceleration to market. And hopefully that translates into some cost compression with regards to delivering the solution to specification. But it's one thing for me to say it, but I'd like to just have this opportunity for you to maybe speak a little bit to, did you actually realize an acceleration to delivery and perhaps some compression on the amount of effort that it took to get the product to a place where it was either an MVP or a highly usable platform?
Alarmingly, yes. And I guess that draws on the fact that, if you went out and tried to build your own spreadsheet tomorrow, it'd take you a long time. You're going to go and buy Excel, but I guess with this, there's agents always work in different ways, different territories, different markets. But, we're currently, still trying to build a solution for one of our niche areas. This is a kind of crossover between our commercial and residential businesses, and they have a very sort of niche solution requirement. And they've had 2 or 3 goes at this, and already they're probably 9-10 months into a build process. So for a very small group of people, it's taken 9-12 months to get them to solution design ready phase, and taken 3 times more than it cost us to get Ascendix from out of the box to on people's desks. So, and I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we had about 14-15 weeks in the project plan when we first kicked this off, and I think we kind of fell behind by about 2 weeks only. So we got this thing off the ground from out the box to on people's desk in a little under 4 months. And for a fraction of the price, I'm trying to build a custom, literally, from the ground up solution. You don't get into organization by committee. You're obviously drawing on a real rich experience you've got. And, people like Chris, who is the professional services lead that managed our project, was able to say, we would say, oh, we want to do this. And she'd say, well, have you thought about what's going to happen in 6 months' time when you've got a fee split and how that's going to impact there? So she was able to kind of bring the experience in that you guys have had that maybe, we didn't kind of quite see over the mountain on, we're kind of we're just dealing with what we feel was the best solution at the time or the best way around the problem. So you're getting that experience as well, which was, really invaluable. But yeah, compression of time, phenomenal, literally incredibly quick to market. And yeah, in terms of cost, obviously, sharing some of the costs with some of our colleagues around the European estate, they can't believe it. So yeah,
that's great. That's great. Well, you bring a couple things that maybe I want to tease out real quickly, and that I think many get surprised by the acceleration, the cost compression. The fact is, as a product company, you're always walking this fine line of putting enough into the box so that it's meaningful, but not so much that it becomes overcomplicated, over-engineered. And I think we've done a really good job of walking that line, knowing that the safety net that we have is that we're built on this very flexible platform, Salesforce, that allows us as a professional services firm, but you as a company that's got the wherewithal to go in there and design this in a more evolved state to really close the gaps and solve for anything that might be identification of your secret sauce, your unique value proposition. And it leads me to another question, Toby, and that is, you mentioned some of our professional services staff, but maybe you can share with the audience here, some lessons learned and some things that you found that you did well that contributed to the success of the implementation, and maybe perhaps things that were lessons that you learned that you want to do less of, that you can share.
Well, I guess the big benefit we had, we brought a business analyst into the team to try and his role was originally to take the kind of Salesforce solution that we had built for one of our teams and spread that out across the business. But we quickly found out that an interface between your guys' expertise and our kind of agents, our surveyors, if you like, was invaluable. So having somebody that can kind of bridge that divide in the business, and actually dedicate, that was his role, rather than taking someone out of the business that was still trying to do a day job, if you like, having somebody dedicated to that really did bring that acceleration, to that kind of 3-4 months piece. So I think that was, it's a great asset for us. But I think obviously it being Salesforce under the hood, we've got this, and I don't know whether it's a great analogy technically, but it obviously works for a non-technical audience. We've kind of always sold this as, Salesforce is kind of like buying an iPhone out of the box. It does some really great stuff, when you take it out of the box, and you can do great stuff with it. But the magic happens when you add the apps on top of it, and that's what we've always sold this solution as into our teams is, Salesforce is the iPhone, great, and then we put Ascendix on top of it, and that's one of the apps there. And that leads us to that piece that, it being Salesforce under the hood, and you're not really having to worry about, the back end part of it. We've been able to really customize and deliver extra functionality onto this. And one of those pieces is when our property management team saw this. It's obviously being used across our transactional side. They saw some of what Salesforce can do with Ascendix, and they've actually been kind of led back down now from away from other platforms into Salesforce just to do some more traditional Salesforce things. So it's actually, kind of spread across the business organically because, Salesforce is such a flexible tool. So they're now using kind of communities, portals that you can just bolt onto here. They're obviously using the mobility piece. We've got our valuations team have moved their form collection and site surveys onto iPads and Salesforce. And, so it's kind of really spread because it's a tool that, is super flexible underneath the hood. What would I do differently? I guess we'd probably, we should have moved a lot quicker on it, I guess, because we chewed up a lot of your time, Wes. There was a lot of back and forth, and and I guess because we'd kind of been down a couple of CRM routes before, there's a lot of people in the business that were quite kind of resistant to it. They thought, it's just another solution we're going to kind of have to try and get working for us. So there's a little bit of resistance, but I guess what we've always pitched it at as, to everyone listening, Wes has done some of those demos far more in depth to specific people, and we've sort of carried those on amongst teams. So we've really kind of pitched it as not as an efficiency tool, even though we view it as that in the project team. We've kind of really pitched it to the people as a sales tool. This is going to help you get more sales, and that drives the adoption. Because if you say to someone it's an efficiency tool, they just think it's just another IT project. But we've really pitched this as a sales tool, for people, and that kind of gets people going. All right, okay, so I'm going to deliver more profitability, more sales, more activity. So it's kind of really pitching it that. But the reality is that all the feedback we have is really strangely about efficiency. People come back to us and say, look, it used to take me, a whole half a day to gather this information, and now it takes me 5 minutes.
Well, I would imagine that anybody who's on this phone who's ever even contemplated a CRM implementation and perhaps even had experience there's something that's hyper-focused, and that is adoption, retention and adoption. Is there anything beyond, that what you just mentioned there and how to message this that you could share with the team here, the audience, that would be helpful to just keep in mind as they strive to get that adoption of a tool, enabling technology, if you will?
Well, I think it's, for us, we've kind of done many kind of champions in the building. We've seen people who've, we've had a couple of teams that literally took this on overnight. They said, right, we're going to take the pain overnight. So we're going to cut off the way we've done things in the past on Friday at 5 o'clock. And as of Monday, we're going to do everything in Ascendix. And that's the real sort of, they're the go-getter teams, and they can kind of just go for it. And they've taken the kind of pain on that Monday morning of people ringing in, and it's like, no, not allowed to use that, have to use this. And it took maybe a couple of weeks to sort of really soften that blow. And we've got teams that have kind of phased it through more gradually. And I look back and I think, actually, that's probably the right call, because some teams you've just got to take the style, and it's the leadership style that flows through the rest of their team. So the way we work, we're probably more like most agencies, I guess. We're kind of 9 mini companies inside Savills. The investments team operate very differently to our land team, and the landlord and tenant and offices team operate very differently to Val's. So we've really kind of let the leaders of each individual business unit lead that, because what we've seen is that when you've got more junior staff seeing their leaders use a product like this, they naturally gravitate towards it. You don't have to force them to it. They go, right, okay, my leaders, my the next person up the line from me is using this, and the team director is using this. And if you can get those team directors and the team leaders using it and seeing the value of it, then that's what drives the adoption. And one of the things that we drive adoption on there, us to get the directors using it, is to really steal a bit of Salesforce technology, really, or sales sort of motivation, which is, if it's not in Salesforce, it didn't happen. So unless you're recording things like viewings, don't come to me on a Friday summary and say you've done 3 viewings, because if it's not in there, it didn't happen. And very quickly people go, right, okay, we're really measuring everything now. And it's the old adage, you can't manage what you're not measuring. And you have to lead people to using a system. And it's really hard, I think, to move people from using no system, as it were, to our system. I think it's really easy to move people from moving from system A to system B, but moving kind of people where they've got unstructured data and data all over the place to sort of centralizing in one place is really key.
Yeah, I think a couple of those things make me ask a couple of questions. And an observation one, if there's anything that I've known, is we're dealing in technology, but we're almost a counselor here, change management counselors. We're moving people from, okay, I used to do things on a yellow notepad on my desk, to perhaps this advanced thing of using an Excel spreadsheet, to now something even more organized, like you've mentioned. And so change management is one thing, but tell me a little bit about what you've done to help calm the fears of what many will call data visibility, security. We've got, certainly over here in the States, especially as you get further into the northeastern portion of the United States, there's a little less willingness to share information. And so there's this kind of rub, if you will, between needing and wanting to centralize data, and this, hey, if it's not in Salesforce, then it didn't happen, and then having to address but who sees my data? So tell the audience a little bit about how you've walked that fine line.
Well, we had to take a macro view, and my macro view as coming from a different industry was, look, it's our data. We should, everybody should be able to see it's Savills data, right? But you've hit the nail on the head. That's northeast, putting it politely, Northeast America. I guess that's very much the same as sort of the northwest of Europe. Certainly, not an expert. Certainly when we were starting out on this project, I probably wasn't an expert in the real estate industry. But I quickly kind of got to terms with the fact that certain teams don't want to be able to share their data with another team. It's we all know who those kind of teams are, but there's my view is that we should be able to see everything, but it's really quick and really simple in Salesforce, and obviously with the model we adopted was, if you've got a land team, all that data sits in their team, and it's really easy from an object model security point of view. Just say, right, okay, if it's ongoing work in the development land team, that's the only team that can see it. Really simple. But when that's completed, when that becomes a kind of article of record, as it were, it goes into our comparables database. And then that sort of seemed to resonate with most of the teams. They kind of got on board with that idea pretty quickly. But we've also been able to do confidentiality of certain parts of that comparable. So we might find that the sort of headline rent in a retail lease is still confidential, or it's part of an NDA. So we're able to add on sort of confidential fields, and people have had to mark stuff confidentially very quickly. So people can have kind of trust that the data is in the system. So at a macro level, if the business needs it, we can go and get it. But we can, use those sort of relationship circles to kind of come back around and go to the guys and say, hey, look, would you mind telling me this? Is this sort of really confidential?
Right.
Or can we get access to this? And we use those old relationship models, like you say, the trust is there in the platform, that the data is centralized, which is good for the company. And good for clients to know that it's secure and in one place and it's accurate with a single source of truth. But those sort of Chinese walls that still exist within the business. So we can really easily ring fence the data off in a few different ways. And again, people like Chris are really helpful in saying, well, have you thought about doing it this way? Because she's seen this happen in a dozen other implementations. And so she's seen it before and has given us sort of great insight into how that should work or how it could work.
Yeah, it's the benefit of having put all of your energy, or at least the majority of the energy, in a particular vertical. You see trends, you see perception versus reality. And if you start to kind of peel back the layers of the onion, a lot of this is perceived risk more so than real risk. And if you educate and you give, a sense of what's possible for those instances where it truly is a confidentiality issue, then we find most people come to the table and are willing to engage. But I think that's the big takeaway for me, is that it's more perception than reality. And I've also seen that as I kind of do this T account of the benefits that are gained from sharing information versus the perceived downsides of it, that oftentimes that gain is much higher than the concern of the data security. You mentioned a couple things. How many times has somebody had someone in their office unknowingly calling on someone that they're deeply in business with, and it could have been avoided had they just taken the moment to just provide a little bit of visibility to that. There's a professionalism that exists in most brokerages that if you do share that information, we've seen people kind of, embrace that. I don't know if you've seen any of that.
Yeah, I guess it's more trust around, look, it is our data. So if, we now know that the data's there, and you're not asking. And one of the other things as well is you're not asking a big deal of someone. You're going to someone else and saying, look, I know you have this data. We could have, the lease break information for 40 units in a shopping center. So that'd be really great for our, our valuations team to have access to, and it's data that we have. So, but it's really easy for them to go now down to our property management team and say, hey, can you give me that? And if the answer is it's fine to have. It's actually a 5-minute job. It's not don't give me this on Thursday at 5 o'clock.
Right.
It's 4 hours work to collect this. This is okay. If I'm fine giving you this information, it's just run the report, send it on, and those guys have got it. So it actually makes information flow. Really quick. It's just puts a few stop checks in there to say, look, is this okay? Are we going to cause a conflict here? Gives people a chance to pause and just have a quick think and say, am I doing the right? Is that going to work for me? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and the reality is, in today's day and age, data is so available. You're a Google search away from getting some pretty rich information from most people. All we are doing is simply putting it in an organized state. So I think that as we go forward, it starts to become, I'm not going to say it's a non-issue, but it's less of an issue. Olha has just made, go ahead.
It's a huge issue for us. I think that big step is moving from unstructured data to structured data has been a really key kind of part of the journey we're on, because one of the great stories one of our hotels head tells us, when we were first demoing this to him, and we showed him this kind of single source of truth idea, and he said, look, there's just been a large hotel sale. I have 3 different spreadsheets with 3 different sale prices on the system, and it actually went for a different price, which is the 4th price, which is in my head. From that moment on, he said, this sells it because it's one point of truth, because you got 3 agents working on a project. Who opens version A or version B of the spreadsheet? Someone's made a mistake, or someone, a junior has entered a decimal point in the wrong place in the spreadsheet and changed the valuation of a shopping center by $10 million. So it's bang. So these things can happen, but having the ability to have everything structured, track changes on certain key fields in Ascendix is brilliant as well. So we can go to someone and say, hey, you changed the lease value on here from 43 to 33 euros a square meter. So what's going on there? And they go, it's a mistake. So it's that continual cleansing of data as well, and owning that data and managing it. And that's been really good for us.
Well, thank you for indulging me on that discussion. I know it's just something that's always come up on these calls, and I thought the audience would appreciate kind of some of the thought processes around that. Olha Oha has informed me that there are a number of questions that are queuing up in our Q&A, so perhaps we should move on and allow those to be asked at the end of the meeting here. Just so you know, Toby is going to stay on for the Q&A, so if you do have questions for him, he will try his best to answer those, as will I, as obviously time allows. So thank you again, Toby, for engaging here and being a part of this this webinar. Really, really appreciate it.
No
Thanks for
problem.
your partnership. So let's move into a couple of other topics here. We've been talking about Salesforce as the platform, and I want to give it its due in that when we made the decision to start partnering with Salesforce, things became much more rosy, might be the word, over here at Ascendix. We had chosen other platforms, and the market had spoken in the commercial real estate sector that Salesforce was really the platform of choice. And once we acknowledged that and embraced that and partnered with them, we really started seeing volume of deal flow increase and expanding our footprint internationally. There are 4 things that I want to cover with regards to the Salesforce platform that I think make it great. There are many more, but one that's not stated here is, hey, it's good to be with the leader. And Salesforce has been in that leadership position for quite some time. And simply put, when someone focuses so specifically on one thing like Salesforce has, you're bound to be pretty good at it. Others that they compete with have distributed interest, and it shows sometimes with regards to their time to market and their innovation schedules and so forth. I think one of the things, and we've talked about it in a subtext throughout this entire presentation, is what I'm going to refer to as CRM agility, meaning that while Salesforce packs a great punch in terms of platform functionality and features and so forth, they've not dismissed the idea that you're going to need to configure this for your own needs. And so they've got this clicks not code mantra there, which allows for people that are not necessarily overly technical to do some pretty effectual change to the CRM system. And again, mentioning earlier, it's the 80-20 rule with regards to what we've done in terms of commercial real estate specificity. I think 80% of what we've got there is highly leverageable, and it's a great framework, but there's 20% that might be your identity, your corporate culture, that needs to be reflected. And I believe that Salesforce just really helps to support and enable that type of thing so that you can close that 20% gap with configurations and tailorings that are specific to your organization. Scalability, we didn't really highlight it, but in the logos there, we've got organizations that are multi-thousands of users, and we've got organizations that are individual users. And so we needed a platform and a partner that allowed us to scale up and down and provide pricing and packaging so that it was congruent with the audience that we were selling to, whether it be the Fortune 500 or the individual broker at a boutique shop or just a carve out of a team within a larger brokerage. Data security, spoke about it a little bit, but more in terms of privacy. I'm looking at it from a, what's being done with your data, and can you trust, if you will, where that's being stored. And I would tell you that Salesforce has just done a great job of committing to visibility and transparency on what they're doing with the data and all the policies and procedures that they've outlined. And so it just becomes a non-issue. It's Salesforce, and most people who've already done the research have gone, okay, I get it. No need we can check that box and move on. That can't be said for everybody. So I think that's a really huge sleeping pill, if you will, for most people who invest in the platform. And then CRM comprehensiveness. Again, when you focus on one thing, that being CRM is their ticker symbol. They better be good at it, right? And so they've invested heavily. Toby mentioned things like Communities, which is more portal technology, along with sales, service, and financial cloud, and all these other scenarios, and marketing platforms like Pardot. It's just phenomenal what they've done, in that you've got some market-ready tools out there that are plug and play for the most part. Not to mention the app exchange that's out there. For those of you who are iOS or Apple users, you've got the App Store. Akin to the App Store for Apple is the App Exchange for Salesforce, where third-party providers like email service providers, business card scanners, telephony solutions, and others business-to-business data providers have all put their connections into this Salesforce ecosystem so that you as an investor in the platform can benefit from investments and subscriptions that you have with those others without reinventing a wheel. And so these are just a few of the reasons why we feel Salesforce is just the absolute perfect partner for us to go to market for commercial real estate solutioning. That said, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, we were a professional services firm before we were a product company. And I wanted just to real quickly go through some of the services that we provide. Toby mentioned a few of those in our implementation of Ascendix RE. And I want to, highlight the fact that if you are already investing in CRM, whether it be on Salesforce or another platform, we've got broad exposure to a number of platforms, and our subject matter expertise and experiences, I believe, could benefit you in maybe one of these particular categories. If you're not yet invested in CRM, certainly CRM selection and audit capabilities, implementing your CRM strategy along with best practices. For many, we show up and there are 4 or 5, if not more, CRM instances, and being able to go through and walk through the processing of how to consolidate all that information appropriately so as not to lose any data along the way, to configuration, customization, and all the normal things that you would imagine. This group that we've assembled, yes, we're providing state-of-the-art and leading technology to the commercial real estate space, but I want to make sure that you leave with the notion that we can be much more as a professional services firm to whether it close the gap in an Ascendix RE implementation or simply help you strategize how to even start the process of rolling out CRM. These are all services that we have, and I want to make sure that you have the identity of both the product and the services on this call. So I think we've covered that pretty well. That said, lastly, just as a bookend here, the products that we have on market on the Salesforce platform, Ascendix RE, which again is focused predominantly on tenant rep, landlord rep, and investment sales brokerages. We've got a publication tool that we built that is bundled into our enterprise and unlimited editions of Ascendix RE that essentially allows you to generate brochures, flyers, lease and sale comp reports, along with activity reports for owners. Toby mentioned the Ascendix search tool, which, if you can imagine being a user of CRM, there's companies, contacts, properties, leases, listings, sale comps. You need that powerful tools to search for some of this. And you saw earlier when I was demonstrating the product, the ability to quickly filter down on targeted lists of prospects. We were doing that using the Ascendix search tool. Spoke to the capital markets, where we're allowing for this to be used as a third-party financial intermediary platform, and also have seen enough interest in land brokers, seen here in the States, that those that are focused on land almost always exclusively focus on land and needed something that really tailored their use cases. And so we built and brought to market a product called Ascendix RE Land. And then lastly, as you saw in my demonstration, the listing portal, the collaboration rooms, the deal rooms, and the lead capture are all part of our second leg of this journey of developing CRM for commercial real estate. And that was first the internal and now the external facing investments with market space. And so these are all part of our lineup here, and it's just beginning. We're continuing to improve upon all of these products and evolving each of them as well. So that said, I'm going to hand it back over to Olha, who's going to facilitate the Q&A session here, which sounds like we've got 12 minutes. Hopefully we've got enough time to answer those, but Olha, I'll allow you to prioritize those as you see appropriate, and I'll hand it to you.
Sure. Thanks for presentation, Wes. Right now, Toby and Wes will be answering the questions you've generated during the session. So if you haven't submitted your question, please feel free to do it right now. So we've had a lot of questions about CoStar. So does this tool integrate with CoStar, and how it's differ from CoStar Research? Okay,
so CoStar, let's start with how it's different. I use analogies here. We're the house and CoStar is the data or the furniture that goes in the house. We're not a data company. We are the framework that stores that data. And so CoStar and other providers focus, and their real value is the data that they possess and you subscribe to. Now, on occasion, CoStar and other tools have invested in tool sets to allow you to manage and use that data, but by and large, they are a data company. First and foremost, I'd say that that's how I would look at we are a tool that houses that data as opposed to the data provider itself. As it relates to integration with CoStar, the best I can say is that they're not overly cooperative when it comes to having their data being pumped into a multi-user database, and I guess I can appreciate that at some level, and that it's hard for them to police and govern that once their data gets into a multi-user database. And for that reason and others that are theirs, they've really been unwilling, and actually in many, if not most, of their subscription agreements have forbidden that data to be dynamically pumped into a multi-user database. So unfortunately, we do not have any dynamic integration there for those reasons that are largely not technical, but more litigious in nature.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question, how do you get your client-facing teams to capture all of this data in the tool?
Toby, I feel free to, if you've got an opinion and you want to tackle one, you feel free to do that. I want to make sure that.
I'll be pretty honest with you. As I say, we pitched this as a sales tool, and we've taken the teams as an internal kind of sales tool. Really, the teams that took this by the scruff of the neck and went with it first, they were able to demonstrate and present to the rest of the business and say, this is literally the feedback we're getting from clients. This is winning us pitches. This has been, this is the thing that has made the difference between agent A and agent B. So we've done that. And I'll be honest with you, we've had some people that have been resistant to this, and those people aren't with us anymore, because sometimes you find out there are some people that just don't want to work and don't believe in the journey you're on. And not senior people, but we've had struggles with people, and it's been a KPI for people, and said, look, you're not matching KPIs. This is how we need you to do the job now. Don't put it in Excel, put it here. And if you don't want to work that way, a small collection of people have decided they don't want to work that way. They want to be in the old school, which is, this is what I think, not what I know. And you know what? When people see that it actually drives sales and it does actually save you time, that's really easy to get people to kind of say, this is a solution I can get on board with, and a little bit of time input in this data is going to save me a whole heap of time further down the road.
Yeah.
I mean, we've countless examples of people being able to run reports and get data in minutes rather than running around the building for half a day. Can I get this? Oh no, that person's out. He's the only person that knows that. Oh, she won't give you that anyway. So it is, when people see it, it changes. They will do it. But it is, that first part of the journey is hard. You've got to really sort of show people how it saves some time.
You have to be committed. You have to be committed to it as well. It's not going to happen overnight. And I love the way you said that in terms of driving sales. People speak the lingua franca, right? Being able to, the language of money, everything you can do, if you can put it into that framework, that seems to get everybody's attention. Showing up at training, not just by skill building, but informing and energizing the group with those types of examples. And there are many, really helps to contribute to inclusion of this whole data capture. Of course, if you want to think about it from a more tactical perspective, spreadsheets are a great way to stage data. People give us this data as long as it's digital. We have had many who've shown up with a yellow notepad and said, hey, can you get this into the system? And that presents a bit of a challenge, but many people are very familiar with skills, the Excel spreadsheet, and can, using their skills, manipulate that data and get it into a stageable capacity. So, whether it be incenting them to do it, but then actually showing them how to go about doing it, Excel tools, we've got templates that we provide that help to frame this up into the two-dimensional data that is really reflective of the system that we've talked about and shown today. So hopefully that helps those who are asking that question. So Olha, I know there are others, so I want to try to be fair about how much time we spend on any one.
Sure. Toby, why you decided to go for Ascendix and Salesforce versus building something custom?
Well, time to market and cost. Look, I've come from an industry where I've built several solutions from the ground up, and they cost a huge amount of money. We could see this from the ground up. We had the PLC were driving a Dynamics 365 route. We looked at it, and doesn't have any properties in it. It's essentially an address book, we saw it as. We wanted this to join the gap between the stock that we're trying to move and the people. And we were looking for, something with great search and mapping ability, something that geolocated automatically. And you've got people like, would link to Tableau, things like this that we needed to integrate with other solutions we already have. And, I guess Salesforce does all of those, as Wes has spoken. It's the prohibitive nominee is the solution of choice if you're going to go out to market and get a CRM solution. And then Ascendix bolted on top just gave us, the confidence. From the very first demos, we've shown it to sort of some of the tech savvy leadership group, and they could see pretty much out the box it almost did what they needed. And it is that just getting that bit from out the box to that sort of finished article, that 20% of customization. We knew we could see this wasn't going to cost us. It wasn't going to go out and be a 6-figure kind of project. This was going to be, quick to market, 3 to 4 months, and a pretty reasonable cost in terms of get it finished. And all those things happened. We got it done on time and on budget. So what we were, I guess, the journey we had and the work we had and the confidence that was kind of projected by Wes and the team kind of lived out, really. That we said it's going, and I guess it's the confidence as well, because you're dealing with someone that does commercial real estate. They're not trying to kind of move their experience from another product area into this. They know how much these, how long these projects take. It's like, right, okay, pretty much simple variables. How many people you got? What are you trying to do? Have you got a business analyst in the team already? Yes. You got a technology team playing, right? We think it's going to take 4 months. It's going to cost this much. And they know what they're doing, so it lived out, and all I can say is what's happened from here is the product's just gone on from strength to strength in terms of customizations and other things we've thrown at it. So no one's going to get fired. It's like the old adage, no one's going to get fired for buying IBM. Well, they probably will do these days, but it's the old adage of no one's going to get fired for buying Salesforce, because it's going to do what you need, and it's got all the flexibility in the add-ons, and they're constantly growing. They're acquiring Tableau, and they've got data lakes they're bringing data into, and out of the box it just does things that no other product does.
Well, Olha, we've got 3 minutes here. Maybe you pick the juiciest remaining question that we can sink our teeth into.
Okay, are you exclusively providing services to Salesforce?
So we are 25 years in the market, and we existed prior to Salesforce. And so, as you can appreciate, we've had exposure to a variety of platforms out there, with a constant objective and focus being on the client's best interest. And as we see new products out there, whether they're direct CRM products or derivatives and offshoots of CRM, we're constantly out there looking to make sure that our client's best interests are in mind. That said, the answer is no. We do provide consulting services beyond Salesforce. While Salesforce is certainly the dominant player in the market, there are others that have chosen another platform, and we don't want to disregard that. If we're going to really dominate the commercial real estate space, we have to be a bit more open-minded than just one particular platform. So yes, we do, but I would say far and away the growth area for us is in the Salesforce platform area.
Okay, great. Do you want me to ask one another question?
I think we'll go with one more.
Okay, so we are not a size of Savills. Would your product be a fit for a small brokerage firm?
When we first started, we were going in the deep waters, fishing for those multi-thousand user implementations, and we had a good bit of success with that. But what we found is that in those larger implementations, we're not really penetrating the consciousness of the individual broker for a variety of reasons we won't get into, but have then moved intentionally to packaging our product and our pricing to be accommodatable for something as small as an individual broker or boutique or work group within a larger brokerage. And so I would tell you that a fair number of our implementations are for that smaller group there that has candidly a modest budget. We've tried to democratize as much of this as we could so that you can have it all in a solution without having to spend a lot of energy to get it up and running. That 80-20 rule can sometimes, for those who have modest requirements, be a 95-5 rule, where 95% of it's there, and all we're focusing on is simply loading the data into the system. So I think you'd find not only in our subject matter expertise, it's applicable to both large scale and small, but the packaging and the pricing have all thought through the needs, wants, and desires of the small brokerage and broker, along with that large enterprise play. So I think we're at the hour, and out of respect for everybody's time, we'll go ahead and conclude. There are, I'm sure, other questions. What we'll do is we'll inventory those and see if we can't put together a Q&A in addition to the recording that you will all get. So Ohai, if you don't mind reminding everybody, what are they to expect after they hang up here in terms of access to the recording? It's automated, is it not?
Yeah, it's automated, but I will reach out to each of you with the Q&A lists and with answering some questions so we can stay in touch. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or to Wes directly using LinkedIn or email. So.
Yeah, so on that note, here's the contact us page here. You've got phone numbers and an email address there at the bottom, sales@ascendix.com. We'll route that accordingly. So again, appreciate your time and attention. Special thanks to you, Toby, for joining us. I really do appreciate your partnership and your business.
Problem.
And I hope everybody got some value out of this. We're looking to see if about doing something down the road to maybe build on top of this. So if you've got thoughts and topics that you'd like for us to discuss in a future webinar or podcast, please don't hesitate to let us know. So with that said, thanks everybody. Make it a great day, and cheers.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.